The electric clippers buzzed against Hannah Preston's scalp, slicing through her meticulously braided hair before she could even react. Time froze. Her debate tournament speech cards scattered across the floor as her hands flew to her head, feeling the cold, exposed patch of scalp. Behind her, Jason Whitley's laughter cut through the horrified gasps of their classmates. Her eyes met the phone cameras already recording her humiliation. In that moment, Hannah didn't know what would hurt worse, the violation she felt now, or having to explain to her mysteriously powerful father why his beloved daughter came home missing half her hair. Before we dive into this story, I'm curious, where are you watching from right now and what time is it there? The stories I tell connect people from around the world, and I'd love to know. Drop your location and time in the comments below. And if you haven't already joined our storytelling family, hit that subscribe button so you never miss the moment when everything changes. Hannah Preston adjusted her blazer in the mirror, making sure every detail was perfect. Debate tournament days required precision, in arguments, in appearance, in attitude. As one of the few black students at Westlake Prep, she'd learned early that she'd be judged by different standards. "You ready, sunshine?" her father called from downstairs. Marcus Preston appeared in her doorway, impeccably dressed in a tailored suit despite the early hour. People often commented on how alike they were, both tall, both carrying themselves with quiet confidence, both with eyes that missed nothing. "Almost," Hannah replied, securing her braids into a neat bun. "These took 6 hours yesterday, but worth every minute." Her father smiled, but something flickered in his eyes. Pride mixed with a familiar worry she couldn't quite understand. "Remember what I always tell you?" he asked, straightening her debate team pin. Hannah recited their family mantra, "Prestons don't just survive. We excel." What Hannah didn't say was the other half of the lesson she'd absorbed: Prestons also kept secrets. Like why her father's phone rang at all hours. Why men in dark suits occasionally appeared at their door late at night. Why they'd moved to this affluent, mostly white suburb when she was 10, leaving behind their old life. At school, Hannah maintained her perfect GPA while navigating the microaggressions that colored her days. Teachers who seemed surprised by her articulate answers. Students who asked to touch her hair without permission. Administrators who somehow never saw the problems she reported. Jason Whitley was the worst offender. Son of the school's biggest donor, he'd made Hannah his target since she'd beaten him for top-class rank freshman year. His comments grew bolder as their debate team rivalry intensified. Yesterday, he'd accidentally knocked her research binder into the trash, smirking as he walked away. "Just ignore him," her friend Zoe advised. "He's threatened by you." Hannah nodded, but inside, something burned. Her father had taught her to handle conflicts with dignity, but also to never forget disrespect. "There was always a reckoning," he said. Always. The debate tournament would be live-streamed to other schools, a chance for Hannah to shine beyond Westlake's walls. As she prepared her opening arguments that evening, her father received a phone call that pulled him away to his study. Through the door, she heard fragments: "The shipment, yes, handle it quietly, no witnesses." Hannah pushed the words from her mind. Her father ran a logistics company. International shipping. Nothing more. That night, she practiced her speech in the mirror, unaware that tomorrow would force her to question everything she thought she knew about her family, her identity, and just how far a father would go to protect his daughter. The debate room buzzed with nervous energy as Hannah systematically dismantled her opponent's argument. From the corner of her eye, she spotted Jason Whitley slouched in his seat, face darkening with each point she scored. Hannah's teammate shot her a thumbs up as she built toward her conclusion. "And that is why the evidence overwhelmingly supports our position," Hannah finished, feeling the familiar rush of a strong performance. The room erupted in applause. All except Jason, who slipped out of his seat toward the back of the room. Hannah returned to her chair, pulling out her notes for the rebuttal phase. The judge was writing comments when she felt a presence behind her. Before she could turn, a mechanical buzzing filled her ear. Cold metal touched her scalp. A sharp tug, then release. The room went silent. Hannah's hand flew to the back of her head. Where her neat rows of braids should have been, she felt bare skin. Her fingers trembled as they explored the jagged edge of what remained of her hair. Jason stood behind her, electric clippers in hand, a clump of her braids on the floor between them. "Oops," he said, his smile never reaching his eyes. "Just evening things out. You people are so sensitive about your hair, right?" The words, "you people," echoed in the stunned silence. Someone gasped. Ms. Rodriguez, the debate coach, rushed forward. "Jason. Office, now." But Hannah barely heard any of it. She saw only the phones raised, recording her humiliation. The laughter from Jason's friends. The pity in everyone else's eyes. Her careful composure shattered. Tears blurred her vision as she grabbed her bag and ran, braids still falling from the damaged section, leaving a trail behind her like breadcrumbs. In the bathroom, Hannah confronted her reflection, the bald patch impossible to hide, impossible to fix. 6 hours of braiding, ruined. But worse was the violation, the casual cruelty, the clear message, "You don't belong here." When Zoe found her, Hannah was still shaking. "Principal Harmon is talking to Jason now," Zoe said hesitantly. "But..." "Hannah, his dad just pulled into the parking lot." Hannah knew what that meant. Richard Whitley's donations had built the school's new science wing. His name was on the football stadium. His son would face no real consequences. When Hannah's phone rang, her father's name flashing on the screen made her stomach drop. Someone had sent him the video already. "Hannah." His voice was frighteningly calm. "Are you hurt?" "Dad, I..." "Answer the question, sunshine. Are you physically hurt?" "No, but..." "Stay where you are. I'm coming." The line went dead. In all her 16 years, Hannah had never heard that tone from her father. It wasn't anger. It was something colder, more calculated. For the first time, she understood why business associates sometimes seemed afraid of Marcus Preston. And for the first time, Hannah wondered exactly what kind of man was now driving toward Westlake Prep to collect his daughter. Hannah waited in Principal Harmon's office, a scarf wrapped around her head, hiding the damage. Through the glass partition, she watched Jason and his father emerge from their meeting. Jason caught her eye and smirked before his father ushered him out. Principal Harmon returned, his smile too tight. "Hannah, we're taking this very seriously. Jason will be serving after-school detention for the next week." "Detention?" Hannah's voice cracked. "He assaulted me. He cut my hair while making racist comments. And it's all on video." Harmon's smile never wavered. "We need to be measured in our response. Jason made a poor choice, but his record is otherwise spotless." The door opened before Hannah could respond. Her father entered, and the room's atmosphere instantly changed. Marcus Preston carried himself with quiet authority, his tailored suit and steady gaze making Principal Harmon straighten in his chair. "Mr. Preston, thank you for coming. We were just discussing..." "Show me the video," Marcus interrupted. Harmon shifted uncomfortably. "I don't think that's the video that everyone in this school has seen except me." "Show it." After Harmon reluctantly played the clip, Marcus stayed perfectly still, only his eyes betraying his rage. Then he asked one question: what consequences will this boy face? When Harmon explained the detention, Marcus laughed, a sound without humor. "My daughter was assaulted in your school, on camera, with racist intent, and your response is detention?" Marcus leaned forward. "Richard Whitley's donations must buy quite a lot of protection." Harmon flushed. "That's not..." "We're leaving," Marcus told Hannah, then turned back to Harmon. "This isn't over." In the car, Hannah finally broke down, tears soaking through the scarf. Marcus drove in silence until they reached home, then made a single phone call. "It's me. I need Gabriella at my house. Hair emergency. 1 hour." He paused. "And Victor too." "Different matter." By evening, a renowned hairstylist had salvaged Hannah's hair into a beautiful short style that incorporated the remaining braids. Hannah admired the result, feeling a flicker of confidence return. But her curiosity about the second visitor wouldn't fade. From her bedroom, she heard low voices in her father's study. Creeping down the hall, she caught fragments of conversation. "The Whitley boy? Richard's son?" A man's voice, "Victor. I want information on all of them," her father replied. "Their businesses. Their habits. Their secrets. Marcus, you've stayed clean for years. Is this worth? He touched my daughter. Find me leverage." Hannah retreated to her room, mind racing. What did "stayed clean" mean? What kind of leverage was her father seeking? That night, Hannah made a decision. She would return to school tomorrow. She wouldn't give Jason the satisfaction of driving her away. But as she lay in bed, her father's words echoed in her mind, "This isn't over." For the first time, Hannah wondered if she should be more afraid for Jason than of him. Hannah entered Westlake Prep the next morning with her chin high and her new hairstyle drawing admiring glances. Her hands trembled inside her pockets, but no one watching would know. The whispers followed her down the hallway. Not all were unkind, many students expressed outrage on her behalf, impressed by her courage in returning. The video had sparked a school-wide conversation about racism and accountability that administrators couldn't ignore. "Girl, you look amazing," Zoe said, falling into step beside her. "Are you okay?" "I'm here, aren't I?" Hannah replied. Ms. Rodriguez intercepted them before first period. "Hannah, I've filed a formal complaint with the district about how this was handled. This goes beyond school policy." Hannah thanked her, touched by the support but still raw from betrayal. Not just from Jason, but from the institution that was supposed to protect her. In debate class, Jason's seat remained empty. Hannah allowed herself a moment of satisfaction before Ms. Rodriguez announced he'd been temporarily suspended from the team. A small victory, but something. At lunch, Hannah noticed a black sedan parked across from school. Through the tinted windows, she couldn't see the driver, but something about the car seemed familiar, like those that occasionally appeared at her house late at night. After school, the same car followed Hannah's bus at a distance. When she got off at her stop, it drove past slowly before continuing down the street. At home, Hannah headed straight for her father's study. With him still at work, this might be her only chance to find answers. She hesitated at the door, their family rule echoing in her mind, never enter Dad's study without permission. But yesterday had changed things. She needed to know what her father was planning. Inside, everything looked ordinary: organized bookshelves, framed business awards, family photos. Hannah started with the desk drawers. Most contained normal business files, until she found a false bottom in the lowest drawer. Underneath lay newspaper clippings, some yellowed with age. Headlines jumped out. Preston Enterprises cleared in federal investigation, logistics mogul denies Underworld connections, Marcus Preston, legitimate businessman or shadow player? Heart pounding, Hannah pulled out more papers. Photos of her father with men she'd never seen. Documents in code she couldn't decipher. A wedding photo of her parents she'd never seen before, her mother radiant, her father younger, surrounded by stern-faced men with bulges under their jackets. The front door closed downstairs. Hannah quickly replaced everything and slipped out of the study, mind reeling. At dinner, Marcus studied his daughter's face. "How was school?" "Fine," Hannah said, pushing food around her plate. "Jason wasn't there." Good. Something in her father's tone made Hannah look up. Dad, what do you really do? For work, I mean. Marcus set down his fork. I told you. International logistics. And that requires men watching the school today? Following my bus? Her father's expression didn't change, but something shifted in his eyes. You notice a lot. I'm your daughter, Hannah replied. Before he could answer, his phone rang. Marcus checked the screen and stood. I need to take this. As he stepped into his study, Hannah heard, yes, we have the information on Whitley. His development deal, offshore accounts, vulnerable. That night, Hannah researched her father online, finding business profiles describing Marcus Preston as a successful entrepreneur who had revolutionized certain shipping corridors. But beneath the legitimate success, questions swirled about ties to organized crime early in his career. The Underworld King, one article had called him. Long retired, it claimed, but never forgotten. Hannah closed her laptop, unsure what terrified her more, that these stories might be true, or what it would mean for Jason Whitley if they were. 3 days after the incident, the atmosphere at school subtly changed. Teachers who had previously ignored microaggressions were suddenly vigilant. Principal Harmon himself stopped Hannah in the hallway to ask about her well-being, his smile strained, eyes darting nervously. Jason returned to school subdued, keeping his distance from Hannah. When their paths crossed in the cafeteria, he quickly changed direction, face pale. Something's weird, Zoe whispered during study hall. Jason's dad withdrew his donation for the new athletic center. And Principal Harmon looks like he hasn't slept in days. That afternoon, Hannah overheard 2 teachers talking. Did you hear about the Whitleys? Someone broke into their house last night. Anything stolen? That's the strange part. Nothing taken, but Richard's office was ransacked. And apparently someone shaved their dog completely bald. Hannah's blood ran cold. The symbolic message was impossible to miss. At home, she confronted her father. What did you do to the Whitleys? Marcus looked up from his newspaper. I have no idea what you're talking about. Their house was broken into. Their dog was shaved bald. That's not a coincidence. Her father folded the paper carefully. Sometimes, Hannah, people who hurt others experience karma. Don't lie to me, Hannah's voice shook. Not anymore. I found the articles in your study. The Underworld King, that's what they called you. The silence stretched between them until Marcus sighed. You weren't supposed to know this part of my life. Not ever. So it's true? Partially. I built a business empire, Hannah. Some aspects were outside traditional boundaries. You're a criminal, Hannah whispered. I was. For years before you were born. After your mother died, I decided to leave that world behind. Give you a normal life. He leaned forward. But I still have connections. Resources. Did you send people to terrorize the Whitleys? I sent a message, Marcus corrected. Nobody touches my daughter without consequences. Hannah felt dizzy. The men watching the school. Protection. This isn't over yet. It has to be. Hannah stood up. You can't just break into houses and threaten people. Can't I? Something dark flashed in her father's eyes. Richard Whitley made his fortune cutting corners on building safety codes. His son assaulted my daughter with racist intent. The school protected them both. Tell me, who else will deliver justice if not me? This isn't justice. It's revenge. Sometimes they're the same thing. Marcus's phone buzzed. He glanced at it. We'll finish this conversation later. I have a meeting. After he left, Hannah called Zoe in tears. My dad, he's not who I thought he was. What do you mean? He's dangerous, Zoe. Really dangerous. And I think this thing with Jason is just getting started. Hannah didn't sleep that night, torn between the father she thought she knew and the man being revealed. Part of her, a part she wasn't proud of, felt a dark satisfaction knowing Jason and his family were afraid. Another part recoiled at what her father might do next. The next morning, an expensive black car she didn't recognize waited in their driveway. The driver, a stone-faced man in a suit, nodded respectfully. "Your father sent me, Miss Preston. He thought you might prefer not to take the bus today." As the car pulled into the school parking lot, every head turned. Hannah stepped out, feeling the weight of dozens of stares. In 24 hours, the power dynamics had shifted completely. She wasn't just Hannah Preston anymore. She was the Underworld King's daughter. And everyone suddenly knew it. Principal Harmon's voice crackled over the intercom during third period. "Hannah Preston to the main office, please." Walking the silent hallway, Hannah felt a strange new power in how staff members nodded deferentially as she passed. The same administrators who had dismissed her complaints now couldn't meet her eyes. In the office, she found Jason and his father waiting with Principal Harmon and the district superintendent. Jason looked like he hadn't slept, his usual arrogance replaced by genuine fear. "Hannah," the superintendent began, "in light of reviewing the video evidence, we're implementing additional disciplinary measures against Jason. He'll be suspended for 2 weeks and removed from the debate team permanently." Richard Whitley placed his hand on his son's shoulder. "Jason would also like to apologize. Publicly." Jason stared at the floor. "I'm sorry for what I did. It was wrong and racist." The word sounded rehearsed, empty. Hannah said nothing, understanding this wasn't justice, this was fear. Not of consequences, but of her father. "We're also implementing new anti-bullying and anti-discrimination policies," Harmon added, his smile desperate. "A task force, sensitivity training, we want to make this right. Will you accept Jason's apology?" Richard Whitley asked, his expression making the real question clear. "Will you call off your father?" Hannah looked between their anxious faces. "I hear your apology," she finally said to Jason. "That doesn't mean I accept it." That evening, Hannah confronted her father. "What did you do?" Suddenly the school's falling over itself to punish Jason, and his father looks terrified. Marcus smiled. "I merely had a business discussion with Richard. About his development contracts, certain tax irregularities, and building code violations that could become public. He made the right decision." "You threatened him." "I enlightened him about potential consequences." Marcus poured himself a drink. "You got justice, Hannah. The boy's been punished. The school is changing its policies. Isn't that what you wanted?" Hannah struggled with the truth. Part of her did want this vindication, this power. But not like this. "I wanted real justice. Not people responding to fear. Fear, respect, the line is thinner than you think." Marcus sat beside her. "The world isn't fair, sunshine. People like the Whitleys count on that unfairness. Sometimes you need leverage to balance the scales." That night, Hannah researched Richard Whitley's business dealings. Her father hadn't lied. Richard's company had indeed been linked to substandard materials in low-income housing developments, resulting in injuries the company had quietly settled. The next day at school, Jason's absence created a vacuum quickly filled by rumors. Some said his family was moving. Others claimed Marcus Preston had threatened their lives. Hannah tried to focus on her classes, but the whispers followed her everywhere. During lunch, her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "You think you're safe because of who your daddy is? This isn't over." Hannah stared at the message, her appetite gone. When she looked up, she caught a glimpse of a student quickly turning away, one of Jason's closest friends. After school, Hannah found her locker vandalized with a crude racial slur. As she stood there, shocked, Ms. Rodriguez appeared beside her. "I saw who did it," the teacher said quietly. "We'll handle this." But Hannah knew the truth, nothing had really changed. Her father's intervention had created a different problem, resentment and backlash. The racism hadn't disappeared, it had just gone underground, simmering more dangerously. That night, she made a decision. She needed to end this her way, not her father's. But first, she needed to understand exactly what she was dealing with, both with the Whitleys and with her own family legacy. It was time to uncover all the secrets, no matter how painful the truth might be. Hannah sat cross-legged on her bedroom floor, surrounded by papers, laptop open beside her. For 3 days, she'd been researching, both her father's past and the Whitleys' present. What she discovered changed everything. Marcus Preston hadn't simply been involved in criminal activities, he had run one of the largest smuggling networks on the East Coast. The logistics company was real, but it had moved more than legal goods. And while he had indeed stepped back from illegal operations years ago, his influence remained intact. The Whitleys were equally complicated. Richard's company had a pattern of cutting corners in predominantly Black and Latino neighborhoods while maintaining pristine standards in wealthy areas. More disturbing, Hannah found connections between Westlake Prep's Board of Trustees and Whitley Developments, financial entanglements that explained why Jason had always been protected. Her phone buzzed with another threatening message, the fourth this week. Jason's friends had escalated from whispers to direct intimidation. The latest message included a photoshopped image of Hannah that made her stomach turn. "Enough," she whispered. Hannah marched to her father's study and knocked. When he called her in, she placed her research on his desk. "I know everything. About you, about the Whitleys, about how the school board is compromised." Marcus studied her face. And I want it to stop, your way and theirs. I need your resources, but we do this my way." For the first time, Marcus looked genuinely surprised. "Your way? I'm not interested in revenge or intimidation. I want accountability, real change." Hannah pointed to her findings. "Richard Whitley's corruption goes beyond his son. The whole system is rigged. But threatening them just pushes the problem underground." Marcus leaned back. "What exactly are you proposing?" "I need access to financial records. Proof of the connections between Whitley's company and the school board. Evidence of discriminatory practices." Hannah met her father's eyes. "Not for blackmail, for exposure." A slow smile spread across Marcus's face, not his businessman smile, but something proud and almost fierce. "You truly are your mother's daughter," he said softly. "She always believed in fighting injustice with truth, not force. Will you help me? My resources are yours." "But Hannah," his expression turned serious, "once you start this, there's no going back. Exposure comes with risks." "I know. But I'd rather face those risks than let this continue." Over the next week, Hannah worked with Victor, who turned out to be her father's longtime security chief and information specialist. Together they compiled documents showing how Whitley Developments had donated heavily to school board members' campaigns in exchange for lucrative construction contracts. How the same board members had intervened repeatedly when Jason faced disciplinary action. Meanwhile, the threatening messages continued. Someone slashed the tires on Zoe's car after she was seen with Hannah. Ms. Rodriguez found her classroom vandalized. Hannah refused to back down. With help from Ms. Rodriguez, she organized a student coalition demanding transparency and accountability. They scheduled their presentation for the next public school board meeting, where Hannah would reveal everything. The night before the meeting, Hannah found her father sitting alone in the dark, looking at an old photograph. "That's Mom, isn't it?" Hannah asked, sitting beside him. Marcus nodded. Christina was fearless. She's the one who wanted to leave the life behind when we found out she was pregnant with you. Wanted you raised away from all that. Is that why we moved here? This was her hometown. She believed it would be a good place for you. His voice caught. She never saw what it became. Hannah studied the photo of her mother, the same determined eyes, the same set of her jaw. Would she approve of what I'm doing tomorrow? Marcus smiled softly. She would be leading the charge. As Hannah prepared for bed, her phone lit up with a final threat. Try anything tomorrow and you'll regret it. We know what your father is. We can destroy you both. Hannah forwarded the message to Victor without reply. Tomorrow would change everything, for the Whitleys, for Westlake Prep, and for Hannah herself. The daughter of the Underworld king was about to claim her own kind of power. The school board meeting room filled beyond capacity. Students, parents, and community members squeezed into every available space, with more gathered in the hallway. News vans parked outside, tipped off about potential revelations concerning Westlake Prep and Whitley developments. Hannah sat in the front row, her coalition of students beside her, each wearing black armbands with "Accountability Matters" printed in white. Zoe squeezed her hand supportively. Ms. Rodriguez nodded from across the room. Richard Whitley occupied a seat on the raised platform with other board members, his smile strained as he surveyed the unusual turnout. Principal Harmon hovered nearby, perspiration visible on his forehead. Hannah felt rather than saw her father enter. Marcus Preston stood at the back of the room, flanked by Victor and two other men in suits. Their presence sent a ripple through the crowd. When the public comment period began, Hannah approached the microphone. The room fell silent. "My name is Hannah Preston," she began, voice steady despite her pounding heart. 3 weeks ago, I was assaulted in a classroom at Westlake Prep. A fellow student cut my hair while making racist comments. It was filmed and shared widely. The school's response was inadequate until outside pressure was applied. Hannah made eye contact with Richard Whitley. But this isn't about one incident or one student. It's about a system that protects certain people at the expense of others. She signaled to Zoe, who distributed folders to each board member. In those folders, you'll find documentation of financial contributions from Whitley Developments to the campaigns of 5 board members, followed by favorable votes on contracts worth millions. You'll find records of 17 incidents involving Mr. Whitley's son over 3 years, all buried or minimized through direct board intervention. Gasps echoed through the room. Richard Whitley's face darkened as he flipped through the papers. You'll also find evidence of discriminatory building practices by Whitley Developments, cutting corners in projects in minority neighborhoods while maintaining higher standards elsewhere. A board member interrupted, "Ms. Preston, these are serious allegations that should be handled privately." "They've been handled privately for too long," Hannah replied. "That's the problem." From the back, someone shouted, "Why should we listen to the daughter of a criminal?" Hannah didn't flinch. "My father has made mistakes. He's faced consequences for his actions. The question is whether this board and Mr. Whitley will face theirs." She turned to address the crowd directly. "This isn't just about corruption. It's about who we are as a community. Every student deserves safety and equal treatment. Every contractor deserves fair bidding. Every neighborhood deserves quality construction." Richard Whitley stood abruptly. "This is slander. You have no proof." "The proof is in your folders," Hannah countered. "And has been provided to state investigators and journalists." She gestured toward the news cameras at the back. "This stops now." Chaos erupted. Board members huddled together, whispering urgently. Parents demanded answers. Students applauded. Through it all, Hannah remained calm, even when Richard Whitley stormed toward her, face contorted with rage. "You think you've won?" he hissed. "Your father isn't the only one with connections." Before he could continue, Marcus appeared between them. Mr. Whitley, he said quietly, I suggest you focus on damage control rather than creating new problems. As security moved to restore order, Hannah found herself surrounded by supporters, students sharing their own stories of discrimination, parents offering help, community members pledging to monitor the situation. By evening, the story had exploded across local media. Richard Whitley announced a temporary leave from the board. The superintendent promised a thorough investigation. Several board members faced recall efforts. At home, Hannah collapsed onto the couch, emotionally drained but triumphant. You handled that like a professional, Marcus said, pride evident in his voice. I learned from watching you, Hannah replied. Just the better parts. Marcus laughed. Fair enough. His expression turned serious. Christina would have been so proud today. As Hannah headed to bed, her phone buzzed with messages of support from schoolmates who had previously stayed silent. Change was coming, not through threats or fear, but through truth and accountability. She had found her own kind of power, different from her father's but equally effective. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but for the first time since the day Jason cut her hair, Hannah felt truly in control of her story. 3 months after the board meeting, Hannah stood before a full-length mirror, admiring her hair. The braids had grown back, now styled in an elaborate crown that made her feel both beautiful and powerful. Westlake Prep had transformed. Richard Whitley had resigned from the board and faced civil penalties for his company's discriminatory practices. Principal Harmon had been replaced. The new administration had implemented comprehensive anti-bullying and anti-discrimination policies, with teeth. Most significantly, Hannah now led the Student Advocacy Council, which gave students a genuine voice in school governance. Their first initiative had been a cultural awareness program that brought uncomfortable but necessary conversations into classrooms. Ready for your speech? Zoe asked, appearing in the doorway. Hannah nodded, collecting her notes. Today marked the opening of the school's Diversity Center, a direct result of her coalition's efforts. As they walked toward the auditorium, Hannah noticed Jason Whitley clearing out his locker. After his father's disgrace, the family had fought to keep him at Westlake, but the new administration had finally expelled him after discovering he'd been behind the threatening messages to Hannah. Their eyes met briefly. There was no triumph in Hannah's heart, only a quiet certainty that justice had been served, not through fear or connections, but through truth and persistence. The auditorium buzzed with conversation. In the front row sat Marcus Preston, looking more relaxed than Hannah had seen him in years. Beside him was Ms. Rodriguez, now assistant principal for student affairs. As Hannah took the podium, she felt a moment of déjà vu, remembering the debate where everything had changed. But this time, she stood not as a victim, but as a leader. 3 months ago, I stood before the school board as someone who had been hurt and failed by the system, she began. Today, I stand before you as proof that systems can change when brave people demand better. The audience applauded, and Hannah caught her father's smile. This diversity center represents more than a room. It represents our commitment to hearing every voice, protecting every student, and building a community where differences are celebrated, not targeted. After the ceremony, Marcus pulled Hannah aside. I have something to show you, he said, leading her to his car. They drove in comfortable silence until they reached the industrial district where Marcus's business headquarters stood. But instead of stopping there, he continued to a nondescript building nearby. Inside, Hannah found a community center under construction. Workers were installing computers, stocking bookshelves, and setting up classrooms. What is this? She asked. The Christina Preston Foundation, Marcus replied. Educational support for underserved communities. Legal advocacy for discrimination cases. Scholarship programs. He placed his hands on Hannah's shoulders. Your mother's dream, and now yours too, if you want. Hannah walked through the space, running her fingers along the fresh paint. This is your legacy, Hannah, Marcus continued. Not what I built, what you're building. I spent years accumulating power through fear. You've shown me a better way. That evening, as they drove home, Hannah reflected on everything that had happened since that terrible day in debate class. The pain hadn't disappeared entirely, perhaps it never would. But it had transformed into something constructive, something healing. At a stoplight, Marcus turned to his daughter. You know, there's an old saying in my former business, the king's greatest power isn't what he can take, but what he can build. Hannah smiled. Then I guess that makes me a builder. The best kind, her father agreed. As they pulled into their driveway, Hannah's phone lit up with messages from her advocacy group, planning their next initiative. She found herself eager to respond, to continue the work they'd started. She wasn't just the Underworld King's daughter anymore. She was Hannah Preston, advocate, leader, changemaker. And that identity, built through her own choices and actions, was the most powerful one of all. When the world reveals its harshest truths, we face a critical choice: let that darkness define us, or transform it into our greatest strength. Hannah didn't just survive humiliation, she used it to expose systemic injustice and create lasting change. Her journey reminds us that our legacy isn't determined by what happens to us, but by what we choose to build from those moments. True power isn't about fear or control, it's about having the courage to stand for something larger than yourself. If you could have been Hannah's friend in this story, what would you have done to support her after the incident? Share your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to know how you would have shown up in that difficult moment. If this story moved you, hit that subscribe button to join our storytelling family, and check out the powerful story appearing on your screen right now.